Anthony Sitko from Capes on the Couch, a show that examines the mental health issues of comic book characters, part of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the show you're checking out now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other stupendously geeky shows at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
And welcome to Play Comics, where once again we're looking at a video game based on a comic property and how well it represents that source material. But today, I'm not sure if that is true. For reasons which we will get into, it's at least nominally true. And speaking of names of things, I have Billy here again to look at another episode. This time we're looking at the tie-in games for the 2005 Halle Berry Catwoman movie. Billy, how are you today?
Slightly worse having played this game.
Well, I at least made the smart decision to not watch the movie again.
Oh, I definitely watched the movie again.
I watched it before we were going to record the last time, and then we had some technical difficulties, and I decided I could not put myself through that again.
Oh, that's fair.
But what was it that made you see the Catwoman game on this list and say, hey, I want to come on for that one?
My wife actually had has the Game Boy Advance version of the Catwoman game.
On purpose?
Well, no. It was a gift at some point in her life.
Okay.
So I saw it and was like, oh, well, I wonder if Chris needs anybody for that. And you did. So I played the Game Boy Advance version of the game. I didn't even look at the PlayStation one.
That's not going to matter. We'll get into why. But what connections do you have to Catwoman as a character?
I read the entire Joe Duffy run of Catwoman in the 90s, back when Jim Bayland had a vague idea of what a woman actually looked like. It was very good. I have the Rucka version from the Rucka run that followed it from my dad, but I haven't actually started that yet. Also, I've just always liked cats.
I mean, cats are pretty cool, so that is a good reason to be into Catwoman, I guess, as much as anything else.
God's perfect killing machines.
For me, I've read a bunch of randomness of the comics, like not really enough of anything, but a lot of things spread out to where I feel like I have at least a good general working knowledge of what's going on with things. And I've just always liked the characters that aren't necessarily good or evil. They're just kind of fit in where they need to fit in because, I mean, that's just how people are. So having somebody who isn't always a villain, but isn't always a hero, that just appeals to me.
Yeah. And it kind of, especially in that 90s, the Joe Duffy run, she's very much walking that line between villain and vigilante, as she's still definitely stealing things left, right, and center, but she's also generally fighting some sort of worse bad guy at any given time. And there was that brief bit where it overlapped with Azrael Batman, and that was weird.
I mean, Azrael Batman is just weird anyway, sometimes for good reasons and sometimes for just really weird reasons.
It was a hell of a look.
I feel like we've been avoiding it. We can't avoid it any longer. This Catwoman movie exists, and I mean, I have to say, it wasn't nearly as bad as the internet has tried to tell me that it is, but it is definitely an experience.
It's bad in a lot of ways that I noticed differently than the first time I watched it. Like, the cinematography really likes to move the camera around for this, like, dynamic feeling of making me and my wife motion sick. There's not a lot of plot there, and what is there isn't really Catwoman related.
I've had to think about this as an Elseworld story because there just isn't really any Catwoman related that I can find. I mean, it's an interesting movie. It has interesting things. To me, it feels like it is somebody's first draft of a movie, and you could definitely go in and do something good with it, but somebody in a studio forced this to come out.
It does feel like a rough draft, and it feels like somebody decided that Catwoman needed an origin story. So instead of going with the comics origin story that's less, I don't know, obviously pivotal, where she's just kind of a poor kid who grew up stealing, we got mystical Egyptian cat stuff and a character whose name is not even Selena Kyle.
Honestly, I think that's the smartest thing they did in the movie.
I kind of think that at some point this was supposed to be like a sequel to the Batman Returns Catwoman. Like, this is the new Catwoman for a new generation. And that got scrapped at some point. But I don't know. Maybe they couldn't get Michelle Pfeiffer back to play the old lady in the house.
It also kind of makes me wonder if somebody was making a movie anyway and somehow didn't know who Catwoman was at all, and DC heard about it and said, hey, this is way too close to our character, but for some reason we like it, so let's just kind of throw enough things in there so we can say it's ours too.
Yeah, my wife made a comment at one point that it felt more like a cheetah movie than a Catwoman movie for the other DC Comics Catgirl.
Which makes a lot of sense. I never thought of that myself.
It's one of the advantages of marrying a Wonder Woman fan.
Basic plot of the movie is evil corporation is doing evil corporation things and wants to make money instead of doing what is best for their customers and their workers. Worker finds out and says, no, you can't do that. And then evil corporation tries to kill her. And then she comes back for vengeance. And also plays basketball with Mark Ruffalo.
Not Mark Ruffalo, Benjamin Bratt.
Yes, also plays basketball with Benjamin Bratt because I know who people are.
We definitely had to look him up the first time he came on screen because both my wife and I were like, it's that guy from the Thing. Why do I recognize that face?
I think the most unbelievable thing in the movie, and I'm not holding this against the movie at all for the purposes of this show, but the most unbelievable part of the movie is all the kids want the adults to play one-on-one and don't want to play themselves.
No, see, I could see that with the amount of like the clear amount of sexual tension those adults are just radiating. The kids will pick up on that and be like, we got to make them fight.
What kind of schools did you go to?
Catholic ones.
Ah, that probably explains a lot because I didn't. I mean, we can give this movie a bunch of crap. Honestly, I think, like I said, I think the smartest thing they did was make this a completely new character. So you're not tarnishing the Selena Kyle name at all. But it's just weird that you have a DC movie with no other DC characters in it. I mean, Joker was also weird for that.
I haven't seen Joker.
It is like this one, an experience. And I haven't seen the second one yet. I'm going to because I really like bad movies, legitimately. And I'm hoping that, like watching this one, I am kind of disappointed in how bad I'm expecting it to be versus how bad it actually is.
The second one's got Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn, right? Because that seems like that would be an experience.
That is correct. And honestly, that is a large part of why I want to go watch it.
I can respect that. I mean, I just watched Catwoman again, so, it's not like I've got a position to defend.
But it's just weird that you're going through this movie, and like even in the Joker movie, you got a sense that the DC universe actually existed. This Catwoman movie could be anyone, anywhere, and I don't think anything really changes about it.
Yeah, like, they're not in Gotham City. They're not in anything, like, there's no indication that there's any other, like, Batman or any other superhero stuff going on. It's just magical cats.
The cops are also just completely dumbfounded by there being any kind of supervillain. I can kind of get behind it if it was, okay, all the villains come out first and then all the heroes come out to fight the villains. But, I mean, as far as they care, she's just another villain doing things with nothing magical or super about her.
Yeah, and, so the main villain of this, of the piece, is Sharon Stone playing a former model turned makeup company executive who has created a super makeup that not only defies aging, but it will make your skin as hard as marble. And that's her, like, superpower, is that she's, like, mildly indestructible. And, like, first off, Sharon Stone, great casting for this. Given the amount of time she's played the femme fatale, having her play a retiring femme fatale, awesome. But, like, there's no, like, that's not a existing DC character. That's not, like, it just kind of feels like it's doing the Batman Returns Catwoman again, this time with Halle Berry and no Batman. I genuinely wonder if they were thinking they were going to get Michelle Pfeiffer back to play the old lady who owned the cat that gave her the magic powers. But I kind of got the implication that lady was supposed to be a previous Catwoman or something.
Oh, she definitely said she was a previous Catwoman.
Oh, okay. I was just going off of the fact that she had kind of freaky eyes.
No, she she at least had the powers in there. Maybe she didn't go do the Catwoman villain thing, but she definitely said in there that she had the powers. She knew all of the lore of everything in there.
Mm-hmm.
That would have made perfect sense if they had gotten Michelle Pfeiffer to come back for it.
She must have been too busy with Stardust. Much better movie.
Well, on that note, we're going to go make a list of movies that are not much better than movies than this Catwoman one. Well, I dropped some promos for a few other things.
God, the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Maybe I can do a podcast about comic books. No, everybody does a podcast about comic books. Maybe I can do a podcast about TV shows. Now, there's a lot of podcasts out there covering TV shows. I know, a podcast about movies. It's too general. A lot of people do podcasts about movies. Star Wars movies. No, everybody talks about Star Wars movies. I need to do a podcast that covers movies and television shows and comics and all the pop culture I loved growing up. Wait a minute. The Pop Culture Basement Podcast, hosted by me, Mike Jamison, covering all the pop culture that I consumed and that we consumed during our formative years. Now available on all reputable podcast platforms. Join us down in the basement.
In the not-too-distant future, following the rapid succession of World Wars III and IV, plus the hidden horrors of Secret World War II, there's not much left. All that remains is a place where folks get together to read and discuss comic books. Sometimes they laugh, sometimes they argue, but they always record and upload their transmissions. You've found one of those transmissions today. Welcome to the last comic shop. Rate, review, and subscribe to our weekly comic book reviews on all the major podcasting platforms at www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com.
Those are some great things to check out. But first, let's finish up here. So, Billy, what's bringing us here is this July 2004 Catwoman game. It came out on the GameCube, the PS2, the Xbox, and the Game Boy Advance, made by Argonaut Games and Magic Pockets. This might not be the worst game I've looked at on the show, but it is definitely in the conversation.
So, having played the Game Boy Advance version, it's one of those games from the Game Boy Advance era where you could tell that they were very impressed with what they could do on the Game Boy Advance, and then didn't actually think if they'd made, like, they never checked to make sure that they'd made a fun or playable game. Because it's very impressive looking, but it plays like butts.
And yet, it is so much better than the Big Boy console one.
That's horrifying.
It really is. I mean, normally we kind of mention that the handheld versions of these things exist and never talk about them again. Yeah, that ain't gonna happen today. Because the Game Boy Advance one is if you have to play one of them, that's the one you need to go for.
Yeah, it worked for the most part. Like, I don't have any complaints about the functioning of the game aside from a couple of the spinny pole jumps are not as easy as they think they are, I think. But aside from that mechanic, the game the game worked. It was just like, I know this game predates Assassin's Creed, so it's not really a fair comparison, but picture Assassin's Creed but really slow. And that's what it is. Like Assassin's Creed with no sense of speed. You're doing a lot of running up walls, climbing on things, jumping from pole to pole or platform to platform. And like, that works pretty well. Again, the pole jumping is not consistent. The combat is perfectly serviceable. I almost wish that I could have gotten further in the game, but the battery for the saves in the cartridge had died probably years ago, so I kept having to start over from the beginning, and that got tiring. But overall, it is a functional, if not really good game on the Game Boy Advance.
Meanwhile, the Big Boy Console one, you are basically straight up playing through the movie, except they do a bad job with things. And yes, this is 2004. This is old enough to where I was still in high school. First person shooters and 3D games had been around to where you expected them to be functional, but having weird controls and weird little quirks in them still was something that popped up a lot. Like, this is old enough to where you don't have camera controls, but it wasn't like a super outrage. Oh, there's no camera controls. How did they not do that? People were still experimenting, seeing what worked. This one, they made some choices, and most of them are bad ones. Like enemy combat, that hitboxes get really weird. You have the same spinny pole things, but maybe you grab them, maybe you don't, and not really any indication why you don't grab them. Like a lot of unfair, the game like glitched on me feelings came out of this one.
That's real bad, especially on a like platformery type game. You want those controls to feel good so you can actually feel like you're playing the game instead of running up the walls in Assassin's Creed because Altair's an idiot.
And even in this one, you're running up the walls in the Big Boy Console one, and maybe you'll grab the thing, maybe you won't. Maybe your whip will hook onto the streetlight or the ladder on the side of the building. Maybe you won't. But I mean, even just assuming everything is acting like it's supposed to game-wise, you're just playing through the movie. I mean, it's not shot for shot, but it is. If you're watching somebody play just for the plot, I hope you haven't seen the movie already, because you're not getting anything new.
So the Game Boy game also just follows the movie, but it starts off, it does like the tutorial level, and then does oh, how did we get here? And then flashes back to the whole mild-mannered graphic designer gets flushed down the toilet and resurrected by cats. Does the PlayStation game keep that same sort of narrative thing?
More or less. I mean, they do it a little bit differently because you're up on the PS2, Xbox, GameCube, but you have the big graphics problem that I'm not going to hold against it, because it's a game from 2004 trying to look realistic. And at the time, it wasn't like horrible, but definitely not the best looking thing that had come out. And the era stuff just hasn't aged too well at all. But also, that's my era, so I'm not going to hold graphics against them. You do what you can do with the tech that you have. Like the Game Boy one at least was, hey, we know we can't make this look good on a screen the size of the palm of somebody's hand, so let's make something that looks comics good instead of realistic good.
Yeah, it was surprisingly legible. I really wish the game had a run button, because boy is your default only walking speed really slow, despite the animation clearly being running. You're really not getting any sort of speed out of this.
I was playing the Xbox version of this one for don't know why reasons, and your jump was the trigger.
What?
Yep.
Okay. What were the other buttons doing?
I mean, you had all your normal attack buttons and everything. I mean, all of the buttons you'd expect to be there were there. They were just not in the right spot. And it's weird And I realized that these days you can get an emulator down to the point of here's a specific game and I'm going to map the controls for this specific game so it doesn't really matter and you can make it be what you want it to be. But you couldn't do that back in 2004.
No.
Your trigger is not for jumping.
No. Like, I was going to make a joke about whether, like, where on the scale of, like, you know, Mario to Armored Core the controls were, and it sounds like we're past Armored Core, like classic Armored Core. All you folks who've played 6, you don't understand what Armored Core 1 was like. Still love it, but boy, you had to hold your hand weird.
This is drunk tank controls.
Oh.
Like, it's not, but functionally it's not, but basically it's the same kind of feeling.
Like, even Batman and Robin's bad tank controls didn't put jump on a trigger.
Ooh. But for all of that badness, I mean, for a movie tie-in game that has played the movie, like, it does a decent enough job playing the movie. So if you like the movie for some reason and you like this kind of game and you can get past the fact that it came out in 2004 and everything that goes with that, it's a game that ties into the movie rather well.
Yeah. To preempt your usual question, I don't think it gets anything wrong that the movie doesn't also get wrong, aside from functionality of gameness. Hell, the Game Boy game might be easier to watch, the camera moves less.
Oh god, I mean, that's the main thing. I mean, if you thought the movie was bad for motion sickness stuff, the camera controls and everything that you would have in a movie, I realize they aren't exactly camera controls, it's the wrong word for it, but I don't care. In the game, alright, so like in 96, when things were coming out on the 64, it's okay that you have a camera that doesn't move, or it does move, but you can't control it yourself. This is 8 years later. Yeah, 8 years later. You have the dual analog sticks. I expect to be able to move the camera myself. And I expect that if I'm not going to be able to move the camera myself, if I am holding a button in a direction and the camera moves, if I don't move my finger on that button, then I expect to be going the same direction.
Oh, Resident Evil Door Syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and in 2004, man, we'd fixed that problem already. As a society, we fixed that problem. Ooh.
I can't even really ask what this game gets right about Catwoman. Instead, I have to change it to, does this game get anything right about Catwoman?
She has a whip. She sometimes acts weirdly like a cat. It's not related to the games, but Halle Berry accepted her Razzie Award for Worst Actress in Person for this film.
I have to give her credit for that.
And then she gave it to Julie Newmar with a note that said, "You will always be the best Catwoman."
Nice.
Which, I'm saying Eartha Kitt in competition there. I think we can open this fight up in your comments section. Eartha Kitt or Julie Newmar? What are you thinking, people? Personally, I'm Eartha Kitt leaning, but I did grow up more with Julie Newmar because I had the movie.
I think you can't go wrong either way. I'm undecided at the moment, though. Maybe by the time I edit this, I'll have made a decision. And if I have, then I'll put it in the closing. I mean, for me, though, the only thing I can really add to that is Catwoman is a cat burglar, which, yes, that is correct, but also anybody with half a brain could think of doing that, and they have done that on so many other franchises for things that I don't think I can give them too much credit for making that connection.
Well, she doesn't even, steal anything in the movie. She sees those guys breaking into the place and decides she's gonna stop them and then pick up some jewelry along the way. I just, it's not like she was like, "Ooh, shiny. Yes, give me the shinies," or something. I don't know. It definitely feels like a movie where they decided that Catwoman needed an origin story.
And I think we've already really lined up what this one gets wrong. It's just, it follows the movie.
Yeah, it follows the movie. And the movie is not good. It's not bad on the axes that I thought it was. I think after we watched it, my wife made the comment of, I think that could have been a better bad movie if it had had better cinematography. And I kind of agree with that.
My wife mostly likes seeing all the different kinds of cats.
I was informed at the beginning that I was not allowed to make cat puns for the duration of the film. I had to use other coping mechanisms because that's how my father and I got through it when I watched it on release.
That sounds like the perfect kind of rule to give you.
It was a catastrophic success. listeners at home, Chris has a webcam up showing his face, and he just started laughing so hard he choked.
It's true. You didn't hear the choke because I edit, but I will fully admit that that is a true statement.
But yeah, I don't know. And one thing that I'd forgotten about the costume is it has, like, claw marks in it. Like, I remembered that it was basically just leather, like the leather midriff thing. But the pants have claw marks in them. They're, like, shredded. I didn't notice that until one of the many close-ups of her butt in the film. And I was just like, wait, there's holes in those pants. Why did you put holes in your own pants? You're a cat. You shred everything. Never mind.
Yeah, that part, that whole costume. Oh, maybe I have been watching too many Jill Barrett videos lately, which is not something I thought was possible, but having costumes that you can actually functionally fight in is really cool when you can pull it off. And this one, I need to see if she's made a video about this one, because I know she made one about Wonder Woman's costume from '84.
The armor? Or
Yep.
that armor was, decisions were made. That whole film, decisions were made. I'm sad that we burned Cheetah on that, and probably won't get more Cheetah.
We have James Gunn now. Anything is possible.
That's true. And I'm excited for Supergirl. I still need to see Superman, but I enjoyed the Supergirl comics that the movie's based on.
Yes, they are very good. And I mean that about both the comics and the movie.
Everybody go home, find the Joe Duffy run of Catwoman, read that, appreciate that at one point Jim Balent did have a vague idea of what a woman was shaped like, and then don't read anything else that Jim Balent has ever done.
I probably don't need to ask you this, but I mostly just want to see how you're going to answer. If you have somebody who wants to get into Catwoman, would you give them this game or the movie as part of a primer course?
No. Not even in a vacuum, but especially not when, like, Arkham whatever is just over there, and you could just have them be like, look, play some challenge levels as Catwoman.
Even Injustice is a better introduction to Catwoman than this one. And I'm not saying Injustice is a bad game, but it is a fighter.
I was gonna say, I didn't even remember that she was in Injustice. I need to play that. I have both of them.
Now that I say that, I might be thinking Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe.
She was in
Either
that
way,
Ugh.
I just like fighters. And when they're functional fighters, it's good. But they have absolutely no story, ever, unless they're Dragon Ball Z. And when one of those not story-having fighters is a better introduction to a character than anything else, that is just bad.
Mm-hmm. And I say this as someone who owns a Marvel vs. Capcom 2 arcade cabinet. Fighting games should not be the best introduction to a character. They're great if you want to be like, look, here's a sample platter of stuff. Pick what you think's cool, and I'll find comics that go with them, you know, like we talked about on the Gundam episodes. They're great for that, but yeah, you're not really going to get a character arc most of the time.
So finally, I just really have to know, if you were going to have two Muppets that are not normally paired up, explain the plot and what goes on in this Catwoman movie to you. Who do you think should do that explaining?
Okay, so like literally minutes before we started this, I was thinking it would be great to have Statler and Waldorf watch this movie with you. So that would have been my go-to, but who aren't normally paired together.
That's how I get people from saying Statler and Waldorf, because they're just the best answer for almost anything.
Ralph and the Swedish Chef.
Oh, that would be good.
Because Rolf brings that sort of straight man vibe that I feel like could play off of the Swedish Chef going, oh, meow, 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 the whole time. I think that'd be a good vibe.
Oh, just seeing him be confused about everything would be great.
Mm-hmm. If you were going to give me the replace a character with a Muppet, I was going to say replace the best friend with Miss Piggy. I don't know that anything would change.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I don't know who I would want to replace. I mean, very selfishly, I would want to have Oscar and Grover and the Count in there somehow, but I don't know where I would put them, because I don't want Oscar to be evil.
My problem is, like, there aren't very many cat-themed Muppets. So it's like, you know, who do you fit in there?
And I think every single cat Muppet that I'm thinking of is actually a rabbit.
There are a lot of rabbit ones. But yeah, I can't think of any cats. Comments section. What's the cat Muppet? There's gotta be one.
Well, Billy, it has been great talking to you about all of this. If people want to hear more from you, where else can they find you around the internet?
They can't. Other episodes of Play Comics, I wrote for Commandercast years upon years ago, back when I still played Magic the Gathering. But yeah, for the most part these days, you can't. I'm here whenever Chris needs somebody, or I find a weird game in the used game shop somewhere. That was how I managed to get on X-Men Academy, was finding the Game Boy Advance game and the PS1 copies of 1 and 2 like the same weekend at different shops.
Normally we would have links to that stuff down in the show notes, but we can't because they're not there. So imagine a link to somewhere that you like and go there and pretend that I link to it.
Yeah, do that. Find some joy in this fallen world.
And what piece of media would you recommend people to watch to cleanse their palate of this Catwoman game?
Go watch Leverage. All of it. All 7 seasons. Do it.
That is a very good choice.
8 seasons? 8 seasons. There's 8 seasons. I can do math.
I am going to go with Assassination Classroom. I don't remember how many seasons there are, but it's a really fun show and you should watch it.
I've been meaning to. It's one of the things that's kind of been on my list for a while. Unrelated, I watched most of the first 2 episodes of Steel starring Sophie Turner, and that is intense. She puts on a great performance, though, but boy is that show way too intense for background music while working.
I'll have to check that one out, though. As for me, the best place to find me is over on playcomics.com, where you can find links to all the social media things, which is pretty much Threads and Blue Sky, or Blue Sky and Threads. I don't know, whichever order you want to put those in. I don't really care, although admittedly it's kind of been Threads a little bit more lately. Seem to get better interactions over there. And now it's probably a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, like how I thought this movie would be bad, and then it was. If you want to be on the show, then check out the link of things that I have down in the show notes. Those are what I'm looking to get booked the soonest, especially those ones near the top because they're older and I'd like to go ahead and get them covered and it'll be fun. Double, especially if you want to do Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Naruto because there's a lot of those. If you want to help support the show, then you can be like Dan McMahon and Ono Lit Class and give the show money because unfortunately it does cost money to run a podcast. But I'm going to be doing it no matter what. So if you can't give money, then don't. That's fine. Just share the podcast with your friends, your family, your enemies, that person that sits 3 seats behind you in class. You know, they probably want to know about it. Plus, there's people between you in case they don't want to know about it, so they can't just reach out and hit you in the back of the head. Don't forget that Play Comics is a part of the GonnaGeek.com network, home to such other wonderful shows as Capes on the Couch, which I don't even want to say anything nice about them because they still haven't done the Spider-Gwen episode. And at this point, I'm just being salty and mean. If you want to hear Carrington Martin and I look at all those lessons that we should have learned and actually sometimes did learn from children's media and how we're just been told to forget about all those lessons now, then you want to check out Sugar Spite and Everything is Fine. There's a link to that down in the show notes as well. If you like the music that I'm really talking on top of right now, head on over to backingtrack.gg and check out all the great music over there. Maybe grab something for your own projects. But most of all, just grab a game, grab a stack of comics, and go find yourself a new favorite character.
God, the Star Wars Holiday Special.
We forgot to watch that this year.
You watch it every year?
No, I was going to start, and because I finally found it online, and we forgot to watch it.
Oh God, don't. I've seen it like 4 times. Don't do it. There's not enough Jack Daniels in the world.
But I like bad movies.
This is not even fun bad, or even really movie. Like, it's just a series of sketches that don't really connect, and none of which are good. And then there's the really cool Boba Fett cartoon. Also, Jefferson Starship is there. Not in the cartoon. They're just there. At one point, Chewbacca's dad watches something that is definitely supposed to be softcore porn.
You're doing a horrible job of making me not want to watch it.
No, see, I'm telling you all of these things, and somehow it's boring outside of the Boba Fett cartoon. The Boba Fett cartoon rules.